Hello, everybody. It is Friday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, Assistant Sports Editor for Multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Post-Gazette real estate and development reporter Maddy Rubin to talk about preparations for the NFL draft in Pittsburgh that are coming up. We just passed the 100-day threshold this week, so preparations are really going to be ramping up. Maddy had a great story in our Sunday newspaper about all different angles of preparing for the NFL draft. So we want to talk to her about that today. I know the show's usually X's and O's, but we wanted to get into a little bit more of the big event that is going to bring a ton of people to Pittsburgh here in the near future. Maddy, how are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Great. We're going to dig into all of that. Before we do, we want to thank a couple of sponsors and remind you that the show is presented by FanDuel. We also want to thank Pella Windows and Doors. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Maddy, we know that the event is going to be on the North Shore and at Point State Park. That's been announced for several months. But I know things are starting to take a little more shape in terms of what is going where. What can you tell me about how the event is going to look physically in terms of where people are going to be?
Yeah, things are definitely starting to take shape as we move closer to the event. And first of all, this is projected to be the largest event that the city of Pittsburgh has ever hosted. City officials are saying we could see as many as 500,000 to 700,000 visitors. So really a huge amount of people here that are going to be eating at restaurants, spending at businesses, staying at hotels. And a lot of that is going to be happening specifically on the North Shore and downtown because that's sort of where the draft will be. The NFL builds what's called the draft footprint ahead of the event, and that is going to take place in Pittsburgh in two locations, actually separated by a river for the first time in NFL draft history, as far as we know. So the draft theater, which is where picks will be announced, is going to be built ahead of the event in parking lots kind of adjacent to Acrisure Stadium on the North Shore. And then across the river downtown, we'll see the draft experience, which is kind of like a massive watch party for the draft that the NFL sets up. It's a festival for fans with concessions, activities, etc., where people will kind of watch the draft. So those will be sort of the main two hubs of draft activity that we're going to see get built in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think the first question people are going to have about that is how are you going to get back and forth between these two spots? The Fort Duquesne Bridge, I've walked that repeatedly back when we moved over to the North Shore office for the Post-Gazette. I'd park downtown, walk across the bridge to the North Shore if there was a big event using the Fort Duquesne Bridge. But 500 to 700,000 people seems like a lot to be traversing that one kind of small walking area. Obviously, it's a huge bridge for carrying cars, but in terms of pedestrians, not exactly going to have a 500,000 people filtering through it constantly. So what are the plans as you understand them to shuttle people between the two spots where this event is going to take place?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that's been a huge question that is top of mind for everyone when we're thinking about how the draft is going to look in Pittsburgh, especially compared to past host cities. In Green Bay last year, this definitely wasn't something they had to consider. The NFL has said so far that people are going to move primarily by foot. Most recently, Visit Pittsburgh told the Post-Gazette that they plan to use the bridges and possibly the Gateway Clipper fleet to move people back and forth. But a lot of these conversations are still ongoing between PRT and the city and Visit Pittsburgh, which is the tourism agency that's sort of spearheading draft planning. So we're looking for more details as the event gets closer, but we can expect to see a lot of people walking on the bridges during the 3 days of the draft.
Yeah, and I imagine that's going to maybe vary in terms of where people are and when, just kind of knowing what the draft footprint has been in other cities. On Thursday night, obviously the hype is so focused on the draft theater, who's going to be the first round pick. Everyone wants to see those players coming out of the green room. So you would imagine maybe on Thursday, the focus is just going to be more on the North Shore, but certainly on day 3 of the draft. When you get into the later rounds, we know that the carnival seems to have more of the focus because the players often aren't there on location. They're around the country because they don't know when they're going to get drafted, if they're going to get drafted. And so ESPN on the broadcast will show, like, here's all the people enjoying football in all these different ways. And, I mentioned that carnival aspect. So you would imagine then things might shift a little bit toward the North Shore in terms of where people's focus is, even though you're going to have both locations at the same time. So maybe it's not going to be, everyone trying to move between one place or another at the exact same time. So that'll be interesting to see how things unfold there. Got some other questions here about the draft before we do. Just want to remind you that FanDuel has AFC Championship odds. The Steelers are out, but obviously the Texans, who beat them last week, are still in. So check out the lines this week and the futures odds if you'd like to place a wager on this week's game. Maddy, there's a lot of people who park on the North Shore and then either take the T or walk across the bridges into downtown as commuters. Do you know to what extent that will be disrupted by construction of the draft theater, the draft stage, and when those restrictions may start to be phased in leading up to the event? I believe it's April 23rd to April 25th.
Yeah, 23rd to the 25th. It's approaching quickly, and there definitely is going to be some interruption to people's daily routines, especially people who, like you mentioned, park in that area where construction will be happening during this. We are expecting some phased road closures and parking lot closures as the event gets closer. Construction of the draft theater and that main stage where picks will be announced is expected to start sometime late March, early April. So we still have a bit of time before that happens. The NFL in past host cities has really built these structures quickly. So they try and interrupt daily life as little as possible. That being said, sometime in mid-March, Visit Pittsburgh has said that more information about those road closures, specifics of which roads and parking lots are going to be impacted, will be released to the public. So as of now, we don't have an exact answer, but as it gets closer, we're expecting to know a lot more.
Do we know what side the stage is going to be built on of Acrisure Stadium? Is it going to be the side between PNC Park, or is it going to be on the opposite side facing the Rivers Casino and the Science Center?
The NFL has not said yet. All we've heard is parking lots adjacent to the stadium. So, that could go either direction. And a lot of this is just contingent on the event getting closer and more plans getting released to the public.
We'll continue to keep an eye on that. Maddy, I know another thing a lot of people have been paying attention to in terms of the lead up to the draft. Market Square has kind of become that focal point of there's lots of construction going on there. I was down there in December for dinner with some friends, and it was pretty torn up, and people are wondering what's going on with that project. Where's the direction going to be, and what other physical reminders that the draft is coming are we going to see over the next 3 months as things ramp up for the event?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you've been downtown in the last 6 or so months, the fencing around Market Square, the construction is impossible to miss. So it's definitely something people are wondering about. And that project is directly tied to the draft. So the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, which is an organization that sort of represents downtown Pittsburgh and invests a ton in the neighborhood, is renovating Market Square right now. It's a huge project, $15 million. It kicked off last April, and the goal is to make the square more walkable. Parking is actually going to be completely banned. Traffic will be totally limited to one side when they're done. And outdoor dining is really going to be expanded. And it's an exciting investment and something that is set to wrap up in April, directly because they want it to be open for business during the draft. So that project is about halfway done right now, and it's one of the flagship projects in this huge collaborative effort to renovate downtown Pittsburgh that Governor Josh Shapiro actually came to Pittsburgh to announce in late 2024. And that effort is a 10-year project, and there are a number of sort of overhauls happening downtown tied to it. And the draft has been a major catalyst for some of them. So we have Market Square. The other major one that you'll have seen if you've been downtown recently is a project called Arts Landing. It's a huge $31 million new outdoor entertainment venue in the 8th Street block of the Cultural District. So right where the Goodyear used to be. That actually was totally demolished to make way for this project. It's going to be a huge 1 acre lawn. There will be a band shell for concerts, and that's also set to open up before the draft. And then even beyond those projects, we are expected to see a lot more retail open up downtown. The Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership has been pretty instrumental in this. In the last year or so, over a dozen new businesses have opened up downtown, a lot of them in vacant storefronts. When we have all these new people coming to the city, we don't want them walking by buildings that are totally empty. So there's been a huge push for pop-up retail, for new coffee shops and restaurants, and we're going to see a lot of that, in addition to just little cosmetic improvements like upgraded sidewalks, cleaner streets, new public art and lighting. So all of that is happening right now, is going to continue to happen as the draft gets closer. And these are investments that are, we're sort of catalyzed by the draft, but that officials are looking at as a long-term investment in downtown.
Yeah, that's great to hear, that it's not just a big build up for one event, but there's some emphasis on making things more hospitable for everyone moving forward. I know the location of the arts festival has kind of migrated from Point State Park over in that direction of the cultural district, as you mentioned. So it'd be nice to have some infrastructure over there to kind of complete that migration. So we'll keep an eye on all of that. We're going to talk about costs associated with the draft and how city and tourism officials are going to advertise the city to the world beyond just the draft broadcasts that will be on ESPN, ABC, and the NFL Network. Before we get into all of that, we want to thank a couple other sponsors. Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci are Pittsburgh's mesothelioma and asbestos attorneys, standing up for victims of mesothelioma and asbestos cancers with over 85 years of experience. Check them out at sdklaw.com. We also want to thank Olivia Numismatic Rarities. Do you have gold or jewelry collecting dust? Turn it into instant cash safely and securely at Olivia Numismatic Rarities right here in Pittsburgh's Shadyside neighborhood. Gold prices are at historic highs, and O&R pays top dollar for your unwanted gold, silver, and coins. Stop by their Shadyside Gallery at 5833 Ellsworth Avenue or visit onrcoins.com to learn more. That's onrcoins.com or call 412-900-COIN today. Maddy, I know you had in your story a reference to the costs associated with this. I know there's been, political conversation about, how much it costs to bring an event like this to the region, both to local taxpayers and even at the state level. What can you tell me about the costs of this event and how, city, county, and state officials are planning to address them?
Yeah, that's definitely been a huge component of planning so far. While this is an event that is expected to bring hundreds of millions of dollars in direct spending to Pittsburgh, and that's not even counting, long-term impact associated with this, it's also going to be really expensive to put on. To put it in perspective, in Green Bay, which is obviously a much smaller city than Pittsburgh, local businesses, donors, the state of Wisconsin, the Packers, and the city committed around $8.5 million to hosting this last year. And in Pittsburgh, Josh Shapiro has already allocated in the state's budget for 2026 $10 million towards draft expenses. So what does that mean? What does that go towards? A huge cost is transportation. As we mentioned, there's going to be way more people than usual moving from the North Shore to downtown, back and forth, all over the city from where they're staying to the draft footprint. So accounting for that is a major cost. Overtime is also a big cost. Making sure the event is safe is super important, and it runs late at night, later than maybe Pittsburgh police would typically be working. So we're expected to see an increase in overtime costs, and that's something that Pittsburgh has under budgeted for in the past. So, this has been a major conversation in the last few months. The city council in Pittsburgh had to finalize a budget for this year, and they were pretty transparent about the fact that Pittsburgh has faced a sort of budget crisis. A lot of the revenue sources we've relied on in the past have shrunk in recent years. And the draft was a huge part of the conversation, thinking about how we're going to fund this event. And for the first time in recent history, City Council actually did approve a 20% property tax increase for 2026. So that's something taxpayers are going to see, are going to feel, and the draft was really central to the debate. Some council members did raise some concerns about whether proposed spending plans were enough to cover the costs of, increased transportation costs, increased overtime costs. So this is an ongoing conversation. That state funding is expected to be a huge cushion for the city, and that'll really go towards staging like what is expected to be a huge event here.
Continue to monitor those developments, certainly in the weeks and months to come. Maddy, I know you also mentioned in your story that city and tourism officials are not planning to just have the draft broadcast itself be the showcase of the city. They're also planning some other things to, use this as a 3-day commercial for Pittsburgh and the region. What can you tell me about those efforts? Because obviously you're going to get the beauty shots, right? The networks do that really well. We saw during the playoff game the other night, which was on ESPN, they had the drone flying beneath the bridges and that stuff. And, but those are also things people see during football season, whether it's Pitt, it's the Steelers, even with the Penguins and Pirates when they're playing, you get those beauty shots all the time on TV. How are the local officials attempting to take that forward with Pittsburgh in the focus for the draft?
Yeah, that's definitely been a major topic of conversation among city officials who have publicly said that they're looking at the draft as this opportunity to kind of change the narrative on Pittsburgh. Mayor O'Connor, when he was campaigning, actually said at an event, everyone in this room could tell you what the commercial for the city of Pittsburgh is going to look like. And we need to switch things up and we need to show the city in a new way. So that's something that city officials have already started on. Visit Pittsburgh. That's the tourism agency that, like I mentioned, is sort of spearheading draft planning. They've actually already started working with a new marketing agency to promote the city in the lead up to the draft. It'll continue during the draft and it'll continue after the draft. And they're focusing on presenting Pittsburgh in a sort of refreshed way and honing in on 2 major themes. The first one, obviously, being the legacy of football in Western Pennsylvania, focusing on Hall of Fame players over the years and just how important football is to this city and whole region. And beyond that, focusing on Pittsburgh's swing in recent years from sort of heavy industry into tech. We have a number of robotics and AI companies headquartered here. There's a whole AI avenue down in East Liberty near Bakery Square. And they want to present this aspect of Pittsburgh to the world. The draft can have as many as 55 million viewers in addition to all the people that are here in person in Pittsburgh. And past host cities have really leveraged it as an opportunity to present themselves as contenders for hosting future events. I think Kansas City, for instance, was selected to host a FIFA World Cup match after they hosted the draft a couple of years back. So there's huge opportunity here. The city knows that, and they are really focused on making the most of it. And that is going to mean showing off Pittsburgh in a way that it hasn't been presented before and focusing on how the city has evolved in recent years.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what fruit those efforts bear. Maddy, I know a lot of people certainly are wondering what the crush of influx of people is going to bring in terms of the hotels and the local short-term rental market. Let's start with the hotels. You had some really interesting statistics in your story about how quickly they're already booking up. For people who might be thinking about coming out to the draft, maybe they're a Steelers fan who lives on the West Coast. What can you tell us about where things already stand in terms of hotel occupancy coming up with the draft looming?
Yeah, I mean, hotels are definitely filling up. This is an event where you don't want to book at the last minute. If you're thinking about coming, there are some hotels that immediately sold out after the draft was announced. Others are around 75 to 85% booked right now. As of last week, when I was looking into this, just searching on booking.com, nearly 3/4 of all the hotels in the sort of greater Pittsburgh area were already booked. So, things are definitely filling up fast, and price increases are a huge part of this. I spoke to the managers of multiple hotels in the Greater Hotel Pittsburgh Association about this last week, and they told me that increases of $200 to $500 are expected in situations like this in daily rates for hotels. And we're already seeing that. Downtown, there's a hotel called The Placemaker that offers sort of apartment style hotels. So like a 1-bedroom apartment for, the 2 nights of the draft. Right now, those are going for close to $1,500 a night, as opposed to during the draft, as opposed to if you were going to book on another weekend, it might be somewhere in the $250 to $300 range. So we're seeing huge increases. That being said, the draft actually has what's called a compressed booking window. So historically, 60% or more of hotel bookings for the draft are made within 30 days of the event. And that's because we see a huge increase of people after the Super Bowl who start thinking about what the next, football related event they're going to go to is. But right now they're focused on the season that's happening. And just as it gets closer, there's more excitement and people make the last minute decision to go. Pittsburgh is within driving distance of, I think, 11 NFL markets. So you could make a last minute decision. That being said, things are definitely filling up.
Maddy, I know you also wrote about the short-term rentals and the ability for people to rent out their homes. Well, I think there's some people that just have straight-up short-term rental properties that I'm sure are going to be very popular for this event. But I know they're also kind of focusing on someone who, may not typically rent their home out, but may look at an event like this and think of it as an opportunity to kind of add to the region's inventory. What can you tell me about that effort to open up the short-term rental market a little bit?
Yeah, there's huge opportunities for people who are interested in hosting someone in their house during the draft. I actually was in Green Bay for the draft last year, doing some reporting for the Post-Gazette, which was awesome. And it was crazy. The houses around Lambeau Field were charging people to use the bathroom, charging for transportation to and from the stadium, and also renting out their homes. So there's kind of endless opportunity here for you creative property owners in Pittsburgh who are looking at this as an opportunity to, like you said, make some extra money. And that's already happening. There's a website that a local realtor set up called accommodationsforthedraft.com, sort of like Airbnb or VRBO, but specifically for the draft. And this is a realtor who saw the opportunity during the US Open when it was in Oakmont just a couple months back. And she witnessed and helped homeowners rent out their properties during that event and set up this site specifically to do the same for people. So the way it works is that homeowners who are interested can pay a one-time fee of $195. They can list their homes on the site and then they set their own rate for how much they want to charge. I believe there was a couple in the Pittsburgh area who during the US Open made $50,000 in just 1 week renting out their home. So there are already some homes listed on there. That site is going to be advertised more in the run up to the draft. And beyond that, it is typical with events like this. We saw it even when Taylor Swift performed in Pittsburgh during the Eras Tour for sites like Airbnb and VRBO, these short-term rental sites that exist all year round, to see upticks in listings. So that's also expected. And there definitely is huge opportunity for people who want to get in on that.
Very interesting. That'll be fun to see play out, for people around the region and kind of see what that local impact ends up being on the back end. But Maddy, thank you so much for your time today. Hope everyone enjoyed this kind of a little out of the ordinary type of episode for us, but Maddy's story was so great. We had to pass along all that information to all of you. So thanks for stopping by. If you're just joining us for the first time, please subscribe to the channel. Please, if you enjoyed this video, like it, hit that like button, help us out in the YouTube algorithm, and please consider subscribing to our written coverage over at post-gazette.com so you can see great stories like Maddy's and a lot more. With that said, we will talk to you all again next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.